Hi, it's Steve. In this video, we'd like to show you how to replace the retaining clip for the dispenser arm on your refrigerator. It's a really easy repair. Let me show you how we do it. Now, before we begin this repair, the first thing we'll need to do is to disconnect power to the appliance. So either pull your refrigerator far enough forward that you can unplug it, or locate the electrical panel, turn off the appropriate breaker, or remove the appropriate fuse. Now, once we've done that, our next step will be to remove the escutcheon, and we can access that part. So we'll begin by removing the drip tray, and we'll just set that aside. Now our next step is to remove this escutcheon, and typically to do that, we're going to push down on the bottom while pulling out on it to release some plastic tabs. Then we'll just lift up on it gently, and that will release some tabs across the top. We'll pull it away enough that we can access the wire harness connector, and we'll disconnect that. So we'll locate that wire harness connector, and we'll need to release that locking tab. So simply lift up on that and separate the harness. You can now set that escutcheon aside. Now our next step will be to remove these 2 1/4-inch hex head screws that secure that assembly to the housing. You can lift that away. Now next we'll release this 2-wire harness on the right-hand side. Again, we'll need to release the locking tab first and then separate that harness. At this point, we can pivot that assembly up and out of the way. Now to hold it in place, we're just going to take some duct tape, wrap it around that, and adhere it to the front panel. And that will give us better access to changing the part. Now with that assembly pulled out of the way, we now have access to the retaining screw for that spring clip. Again, it's a 1/4-inch hex head screw. So carefully remove that. If the old clip is still intact, you can simply remove it and discard it. There will also be a small fiber retainer, and we'll need to hang on to that as well. Now when installing the new spring clip, we'll position it so that the forked end is pointing up. We'll insert the screw through the middle hole. We can start that into the housing at the back. Once we have the screw started, we'll need to rotate that clip into place. Next, we'll slide that little fiber spacer into place. Fit the notch under the head of the screw, and then just slowly tighten that screw. We'll need to line up the notch on the bottom of both the spring clip and that fiber spacer over that little protrusion on the housing itself. And we'll make sure that the forked portion of that spring straddles both dispenser paddles, and then tighten the screw. And then just check the operation of both paddles. Just make sure that that paddle returns freely. And now we're ready to put that assembly back in place. So first we'll reconnect that 2-wire harness. Make sure that the locking tab engages. And then be sure the harnesses will tuck in behind that. Now there are some slotted tabs on the top that we'll need to fit this housing into. So make sure that that pivots down into place and the screw holes line up. Now before we install the retaining screws, we're just going to want to hold that assembly in place. And we'll check the operation of that ice door. Simply depress the paddle, and then make sure that that door closes securely. There may be some interference from that ribbon harness, so we'll need to make sure that that operates properly before we reassemble. Once we see that that door closes properly, we'll go ahead and install those 2 screws. Next, we'll take that escutcheon. We'll need to reconnect that wire harness, and again, we'll need to make sure that the locking tab engages. Now we'll line up the top portion of that escutcheon so that the 3 tabs fit into the 3 slotted openings. And while holding that flush, make sure it presses down firmly. When it's in position, We can then snap the bottom of that escutcheon into place. Once that's secure, we'll put the drip tray into position. Now that we have the refrigerator back in place, you're ready to reconnect the power, and your repair is complete.